Hi there, Steve Coffin here today to talk about languages again. And today I want to talk about words. All right, now remember, if you enjoy these videos where I talk about language learning, please subscribe. If you feel so inclined, give me a like. Now, when we started LingQ, this is 14, 15 years ago, based on my experience, and at that time I had learned 9 languages, I said that the single most important measurement of your capability in a language was the number of words you know. Capability. Now, you may have a large passive vocabulary, and if you don't have an opportunity to speak, you may not speak well. But if you start speaking and speak a lot and don't worry about how you speak, if you have a lot of words, you will eventually speak well. So that getting lots of words in you, initially passively, and then some of those will become active vocabulary, that's the key. How many words do you know? Now, when we set up LingQ, we wanted to make sure that we measured that, and we do measure it. We measure it simply on the basis that if you read a text on our system and you don't look up the word, we assume you know it. If you come across it again and you now feel you don't know it, or you don't know it in this context, you can look it up again and the statistics adjust. But we have a statistic on the number of words you know. Bear in mind that knowing a word doesn't mean that you know the full range of meaning of that word. These are only things that you acquire eventually through lots of exposure. We also measure the number of words that you look up. We call that creating links. And when you create a link, in other words, you see a word you don't know, you save it. It's initially highlighted in blue. You save it. It becomes yellow. And then it goes through different stages, status, so to speak. And status 1, status 2, status 3, status 4. And we do define that somehow. Let me just have a look here quickly. So that, 1 is new, 2 is can't remember, 3 is not sure, but you're getting closer, and 4 is learned. So arbitrarily, we have these 4 statuses, and the yellow gets progressively lighter. And typically what I do is I adjust these statuses manually, sometimes making the yellow lighter, like I feel I know this, then I'm not so sure I know it, and I move it back. But the status is also adjusted automatically when you go through flashcards, a process that I'm not totally familiar with and which may in fact change going forward. But the point is that I have, let's say in Arabic or in any of my languages, let's say in Arabic, going from memory, I think I have supposedly 10,000 known words. The known word can either be a word that I moved to known, that I learned, or which I chose not to save because it was similar to some other word and I felt that I understood the meaning. So I have about 10,000 known words. But I have like far more words that I have saved at some point, links that I have created. In fact, I remember more clearly the situation in Farsi, in Persian, where I have 3,500 known words, but I have like 12,000 saved links. 12,000. What was interesting to me, I went into our vocab section and we have filters there. So I can filter so that I can see just the status 1 words, the new words, just the status 2, which I know that I've seen them before, but I can't remember. 3, which is I'm not really sure, but I'm kind of half sure of the meaning. And then 4 is I've learned it. So, what I found when I went through in Farsi and in other languages is that the overwhelming majority of the words that I had saved, that I had encountered and created as links, the overwhelming majority were in status 1. Like 80% or more of the words that I had looked up were still status 1. I hadn't moved them to status 2. What I also found was that if I went through flashcards or even going down a list, all of my status 3 words, I knew a lot of those words. So that I had a good chance, like it sort of was meaningful to do flashcards because I had a good chance of getting it. Whereas if I go to my status 1 words in Farsi or Arabic, I still don't know any of those words. Now, interesting. So then I go to a language like Russian. and again, our statistics at LingQ, they measure items on the screen. So a word like go, going, goes, they're all different words. So you can argue that that's still the same word. And in a language like Russian, where there's so many declensions and inflections, if I say I have 80,000, 90,000 words in Russian, in fact, that's not really, separate words totally. It's different forms of often the same word. But that's the only thing we're able to measure. And so there's nothing scientific about the measurement of the sort of known words, but it is an indication of what you're doing, of your progress in the language. So in Russian, I also went to our vocabulary section and I looked up my status 1 words, new words, and there were lots of them. There was like 40,000 of them. Again, bear in mind the way we count is to some people suspect. To me, it's perfectly meaningful. It makes sense because every form of the word performs differently, has a slightly different, function in the sentence and so forth. However, 40,000. So I looked at the words, my new words in Russian, and I know most of them. So the point here is that, so how do we acquire these words? We could go through flashcarding, but I find that personally when I flashcard, certainly my new words in, say, Persian and Arabic, I haven't got a chance of remembering them. And so I find that frustrating and I don't do it. However, let's say in Persian, recently, one of the people that I worked with in Iran, she actually is now in Nepal, but she transcribed this podcast, that's sort of a self-help podcast, and we're exploring if we can get that on as content at LingQ. But, as I bring that text into LingQ, there's a lot of white space there. Like I have actually learned a lot of words. I haven't learned them by flashcarding. And this has been the case in these languages where it seems like you'll never learn the words. And then somehow these words are converted into known words simply because you spent so much time listening and reading. So if I look at my Arabic and Persian, I say to myself, well, I got all these words in status 1. What can I do about it? I'm not going to go flashcard. In Persian, 10,000 words, most of which I don't know. I'm not going to go flashcard them. I'm just going to continue listening and reading. Here's an interesting transcript of a podcast, self-help podcast, describing a book called Deep Work or something, or Work Deep, I don't remember. Just getting started into it, how to stay concentrated when you're doing something. And this is interesting. And I'm going to do it in Farsi, Persian, and I'm going to know most of the words, even though I have a limited vocabulary. Because, again, the whole thing, when we deal with words, we're dealing with this rapid decline in word frequency. So that I have enough words that I can understand a lot of these contexts, continue to come across words that I saw before but don't know and I look them up again, continue to encounter new words that I look up and they become, new status 1 words, and they're going to reside in that status 1 bucket for a long, long time because they may not show up again for a while. But I will continue doing interesting things. And gradually, as has happened in all the other languages that I have learned, gradually more and more of the language, more and more of the words become known through this magical process. Not because I deliberately tried to flashcard them, but because I saw them again. I might move them along manually, and we may find a way of doing this automatically, that after you've seen them more than a few times, it moves up until they become status 3 words. And then the status 3 words, you have a good chance. Maybe you could flashcard those. You might do quite well on them, because the whole idea to me with flashcards is I don't want to scratch my brain and get frustrated. On the other hand, if I'm getting kind of exposure to things that I kind of 60-70% know, words, phrases that I sort of know, and I see them again, this is all reinforcing and it's not frustrating. So the other thing too is, of course, to reinforce this idea that words are so key. When I don't understand in reading something, it's not because I don't understand the grammar. There is a limited amount of grammar to be understood. Even if we can't produce it correctly, we understand that there are cases in Russian and there's an inflection in other languages, or subjunctive, or whatever it might be, or particles in Japanese. But it's not the lack of grammar that prevents me from understanding. it's the lack of words. And the number of words is enormous compared to the grammar rules. So to me, language learning is all about acquiring words. We can't be in a hurry to acquire the words. There is no shortcut to acquiring the words. The bulk of the words that you meet after a certain point are relatively low frequency, and they will stay in this sort of new category at LingQ and slowly move up to where they are ready to be launched into your known word total. Some more quickly than others, but that's the process. And I guess that's the conclusion that I come to after analyzing my vocabulary statistics at LingQ. I invite you to do the same if you're on LingQ. Use those filters and see just where your new words are, or where your saved words are, and how many are in status 1, 2, 3, and how many you have learned, and so forth. And the main activity for me still is going to be continuing to listen and read, plowing forward and converting more blue, totally new words into, status 1, put them in the pipeline, and eventually they will move towards known. Okay, that's what I wanted to say on words. I look forward to your feedback.